Hi, I'm Griffin Johnson, the Armchair Historian. Today's video, why was the French military so preoccupied with eating baguettes instead of fighting the Second World War? This video is sponsored by Skillshare. More on that later. The swift capitulation of France in 1940 is often attributed to a surprise attack through the Benelux, and left at that. But fewer people take a moment to consider why the French were so vulnerable to a surprise attack in the first place. Today we'll be discussing three major reasons for France's defeat in 1940. Economic woes, increasing civilian control over the military, and a conservative military philosophy. We'll also evaluate German and French military equipment to decide whether the factor played a significant role in deciding the outcome of the clash between the two powers. Let's begin by evaluating the state of the French army from 1918 up until 1936, a period characterized by a gradual decline in French military prowess. Immediately after the First World War, France experienced a brain drain, with many rich, educated, and experienced officers resigning. This is not surprising, since such things happen after every war, but the French seem to believe that a lasting peace was finally reached, with many genuinely trusting that the League of Nations could prevent future wars. Massive military budget cuts ensued, and service training was gradually reduced from 3 years to just 1 year. These budget cuts were largely the result of a dire economic situation. After the First World War, France was nearly bankrupt, and as a result of the Great Depression in the 1930s, it never really had the chance to recover. Just as the situation in France reached an all-time low, Germany was beginning to experience an upswing. Paul-Marie de la Gorce writes that, by 1936, the economic and financial situation of France had never been worse. These economic woes, compounded with Germany's resurgence as a major power, directly translated to France's sphere of influence diminishing as well. Czechoslovakia, Romania, and Yugoslavia, once allies and trade partners, now looked elsewhere. To make matters worse, the problems of the French military apparatus were exacerbated by the civilian sector's increasingly tight hold on the army and bureaucracy. This was the result of a political chasm between the extreme left-wing Popular Front and the center-right coalition, with both sides trying to secure as many military positions as possible to forestall the possibility of one using the military against the other. In short, loyalty was prized over competence, so it was the bureaucrats who got all the promotions. As a result of having a non-military bureaucracy run by civilians with minimal military experience and an absence of experienced generals, the French military philosophy was fundamentally flawed. In the 1930s, the French constructed the Maginot Line on the Franco-German border as part of its defensive strategy. But F.O. Miksche put it best, stating that the Maginot Line was a formidable barrier, not so much against the German army as against French understanding of modern war. The line was hailed as impenetrable, but it was impenetrable in the same way that the Titanic was unsinkable. It had weak spots, and in 1940 Hitler's forces were able to breach the line through the Ardennes forest, since the French were of the mistaken conviction that the rough terrain would deter any German tank attacks. Again, the problem lies with military philosophy. Standard military strategy states that, in order to win, you need a superior force. The French interpreted this statement to mean that they needed superior strength across the whole front line. The Germans, on the other hand, focused on bolstering their strength at one or two carefully selected points, and then launching an aggressive attack, using fast, light vehicles, dive bombers, and fighters all in unison. Now that we've compared French and German military philosophies, let's compare military equipment to come to a conclusion about the extent to which it decided a German victory. One can make the assertion that French infantry was in some ways superior to German infantry. Not only did the French have superior numbers and supply lines, but contrary to prevailing thought, it was more motorized and outfitted with modern equipment than the Wehrmacht. Theoretically, French armor should have also enjoyed an advantage over its German counterpart. The French Char B1 bis heavy tank was virtually impenetrable from the front, and the Soma S-35, a medium tank, also had more durable armor than that of the German panzers. However, one could argue that Germany used its tanks more effectively. Germany's tank battalions were composed of independent, lightly armored tank divisions, and as previously discussed, their speed was harnessed to surprise the French. The Germans also employed wireless technology, each tank being equipped with radio receivers to relay and mobilize battalions at a pace that the French, who used flags instead of radios, simply couldn't match. And as for the air forces of both countries, the French Armée de l'Air was at a disadvantage numerically, despite high levels of French aircraft production. This is because the French had very few spare parts for their aircraft, and consequently could neither prepare or repair their planes for service as fast as the Germans. Still, French fighters generally outperformed their German foes, with 2 German fighters being down for every 1 French fighter. Overall, we can see that France held a slight advantage when it came to their military equipment, but a poor military philosophy completely negated this advantage. It should not come as a surprise that this faulty military philosophy was upheld when one remembers the brain drain we discussed previously. At a fundamental level, what the French lacked was imagination, innovation, and a willingness to learn from the First World War. The French were rudely awakened from a dream of peace that lasted just a bit too long, having fallen asleep under the false sense of security provided to them by the League of Nations. Now on to today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is the ultimate online self-improvement tool, offering users thousands of classes in all sorts of subjects, ranging from writing to business to video editing and much more. Skillshare helped me out tremendously during the early stages of my YouTube channel and continues to help me out to this day. Of the classes I've taken so far, Matt Ballock's about growing your YouTube channel stands out in particular. It details just how one should go about creating a mission statement, doing keyword research, making thumbnails, playlists, annotations, and doing collaborations. If you've noticed a change in our thumbnail design recently, that is precisely because of Ballock's class on Skillshare. If you sign up for the premium membership, you will gain access to the full selection of over 10,000 classes today. Whatever you want to learn about, you can do it here. The first 500 of you to use my promo link in the description down below will get their first 2 months for free, which is plenty of time to at least get the basics down of any new skill you want to learn. And after that, it's less than $10 a month, making Skillshare one of the most affordable learning services out there. I can only recommend you check it out and see for yourself.